Record.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for taking time this Thursday afternoon, right ahead of the holiday weekend, to join us for Springfield City Club. I'm Paige Walters. I'm your past president of the board of directors, and really excited to have this conversation today ahead of the 4th of July weekend, which we all know is a fire hazard. Here, with the wildfire season upon us, invited these representatives from local agencies who are actively working on wildfire planning and reduction, and they're joining us to discuss the outlook for this year's season and what they're doing in their respective organizations to help mitigate the impacts of wildfire in Springfield. And they're going to provide some tips on how community members can help protect their homes and area recreation spots. So joining us today, we have Jackie Rochefort, who serves as the Planning and Natural Resources Manager for Willamette Park and Recreation District. We have Lawrence Jackson, who is currently a forester with the Oregon Department of their Springfield office. And we have Hannah Schaefer, who serves with Eugene Springfield Fire as their Wildfire Planning and Fuels Management Manager. And her work includes wildfire planning, fuel reduction projects, wildfire risk assessment, and public outreach. So kick off with a round of applause. Thank you for joining us today. What the presentation is going to look like today is each of them will have a few minutes to talk about their own organizations at the table, so you know who they are and what their organizations do. And then I have a short list here of facilitated questions for our panel. And then, of course, we'll open it up to you all to ask any of them whatever you want. And we're going to start today with Jackie, and Jackie has a couple of slides, so I will.
Just 4 slides. So I thank you for having us here today. And it is not lost on us that we're blocking the fire exit here. It's a little bit ironic, but here we are. We will get out of the way if needed. So today we're going to talk about wildfire prevention, oak habitat restoration. And if you can advance the slide.
Do you want to stand up here?
Watch and stand right here. Oh, and I can advance myself. Great. Okay, so thank you. So just a moment to talk a little bit about Willamette Park and Recreation District. We are a standalone park district, a special district, the oldest in the state, as a matter of fact. So we are independent of the city. We have about 1,500 acres of natural area, and this becomes really important, particularly when it comes to fire prevention and hazardous fuel reduction. So I'll show you a map and talk a little bit more about that. And with the 1,400 acres, 1,500 acres, we are stewards for public land, and we work heavily on hazardous fuel reduction, restoration activities, and community benefit. So when it comes to natural resources, we look at sort of a 3-pronged stool. We look at environmental stewardship. We look at recreation, because we are here to serve our community, and we want our community to experience natural resources in a safe way. And then our third leg is education. We have such an amazing opportunity to provide education to our community about natural resources. Okay, so talking about wildfire, what you see, we have several areas around the district that are natural areas, but 2 in particular that I wanted to focus on are Thurston Hills and Doris Ranch. And what you see is that these natural areas are basically make what we call the wildland urban interface. So when you think about things like the holiday barn fire, and you think, oh, well, that could never happen in Springfield. Well, it really could. And the buffer between those wildland fires and the city itself are, in fact, these natural areas like Thurston Hills and Doris Ranch. And so Willamette works diligently to try to reduce hazardous fuels. And when we talk about hazardous fuels, we're talking about brush on the ground and then ladder fuels that climb up the trees. And so the way we do that is we have several ways, of course. We have to come at this from several different directions. And we do some of this with our in-house staff, which is really only 2 full-time people and 2 seasonals. And then we use contracted labor and partnerships. We are part of the Rivers to Ridges program, and there's a great partnership group through that. So we use as many resources as we can because it takes a lot, but we use mechanical efforts, which means we come in and we cut blackberry and we cut ivy and we, use both equipment and hand tools to reduce hazardous fuel. We use chemical applications and we're very, very careful about that, but that is a mechanism we use. And then the greatest tool is prescribed fire. That is how this land is managed pre-settlement. And so what we at Willamette try to do is reduce hazardous fuels so that we can bring fire back to the landscape as a management tool, and to create more oak, woodland and oaks far safer for fire management, than really anything else. So creating those open spaces, is really important. And I would direct you to our webpage, the Willamette webpage. We've got, under projects, there's great information about prescribed fire and the way Willamette approaches prescribed fire, the partnerships. It's a big project to do, but it's a very worthwhile project to do. And then, I'm sorry, look at this, I jumped ahead of myself. Yeah, the Rivers to Ridges and creating open landscapes and especially those areas where we have the urban wildland urban interface. It's so important to keep those hazardous fuels intact or out of those areas to the best extent we can. I will say we do look for partnerships and funding. We are in a bit of trouble this year because federal funds have become unavailable to us. There's a lot of uncertainty, as we all know. And so we are going to dramatically reduce our contracted labor and do what we can in-house, but we take an area, we try to hit it hard so we can get it on a rotation. I think that's it. I think I'll catch the rest of the questions. Take up too much time.
Thank you, Jackie. Hannah, we'll have you. Good.
You want me to go?
Yeah.
Don't have any fancy slides. Yeah, I just want to provide an overview of the wildfire planning and fuels management program. This is a brand new program to Eugene Springfield Fire. So we serve both Eugene and Springfield, and we have 7 contract districts outside of our typical Eugene and Springfield city limits. So I've been here for about 8 months now. It comes from community safety payroll tax funds, and so it's on a 3-year basis right now, and then hopefully it can be included into our normal general fund budget if there's good success from the program. And so one of the biggest things that we started to do at the beginning of the program before I even came on was Eugene Springfield Fire hired a contractor with some grant funds that we had to develop a community wildfire protection plan. There was no CWPP in short for Eugene or Springfield area beforehand, and so Wayne County has one, and so we developed one to be an annex to their plan. The Community Wildfire Protection Plan is basically a tool that allows agencies to be eligible for grant funds. When applying for most federal and some state grants, you have to have a plan in order to qualify. And so that was a big first step in order to continue to grow the program. And in the plan, it identifies some risk areas that Jackie kind of touched on: Springfield, Eugene, kind of what would one assume, South Hills, Southwest Hills, Laurel Hill Valley. And so that kind of allows us to focus our efforts kind of to those risk areas that we identified. And then the plan also has an action item list there. So it kind of sets the stage for the program for the next 5 years. It's not fully adopted yet. We've had Springfield, Mayor Van Gordon sign, and he was the first signature there. And so the next step would be going to Eugene City Manager, and then some, district foresters for their signatures as well. But it's almost fully adopted. And then some of the action items that were in the plan that kind of guides our program for the next 5 years are really focused on creating programs for residents. So we're really focused on homeowners and what they can do to prepare their homes, and just some general emergency preparedness steps they can take, and how we can incentivize them to take those steps, and take away any barriers to completing those. We started doing some defensible space risk assessments. So it looks at someone's entire property and also on the exterior of the home to see what home hardening and defensible space measures they can take to increase their fire resiliency. I'm going to do one right after this, and we've been doing a lot. I have a lot of good success there, trying to do as many public outreach. We started attending the Springfield farmers markets, which have been great. We'll be there one more time on July 12th. We get a lot of engagement from residents there. And any other events, there's a Firewise community off the Boxdrop Parkway area. We were able to do a dumpster day for them where residents kind of dump their vegetation and cleared that out in May in preparation for fire season. We worked with Northwest Youth Corps. We went to Bob Arts Park and Glenn. Yeah, thanks for allowing us to do that. Yeah, use their parking lot for a weekend. We had a ton of people drop off their debris. Already seeing a lot of success, and we're excited to see the program grow.
All right, good afternoon. My name is Lawrence Jackson. I'm a forest officer with the Oregon Department of Forestry. So, kind of a quick overview of our organization and our efforts in fire management and prevention. I work out of our Springfield office, part of the Eastern Lane unit within the South Cascade District. So that means our fire protection district covers Lane County east of I-5, and we protect private, state, and BLM lands within the county. We protect everything kind of outside city limits within the rural interface. We protect private property, I said state property, and then we're contracted to protect BLM patch and checkerboard lands kind of out there in the woods. So that's kind of the protection district for us. That's where our firefighting efforts are pushed. In the summers, we have our seasonal staff come in and we do firefighting, and we do education and enforcement in the fire season. In the off season, we have a fuels reduction crew. That program is run by a fire planning coordinator for our district, similar to your role, Connor. And he runs our fuel reduction crew, which did even some partnered work with Willamette Lane in the Thurston Hills area. So again, they go out, it's all grant-based work. So we give out, we do fuels reduction in defensible space for homeowners and local parks, depending on where those grants are and funds are allocated. So we've done a lot of work in the urban interface and going in and at no cost to homeowners, being able to go in there and create defensible space around homes. So I'm gonna keep this super short and sweet on my end, and I'll just get towards answering a lot of questions shortly.
Perfect. Okay, so I'll ask these, but we don't have to go in any particular order, and if it doesn't necessarily apply to you, you don't have to answer. What's your agency's assessment of this year's wildfire season?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was a few things kind of mentioned in terms of fire outlook. You guys might all be aware, we had really low snowpack this last winter. The snowpack is one of the biggest driving forces for retaining moisture and creating that water runoff, which helps keep things from drying out as we transition into the summer. So a low snowpack with a little bit of below average moisture and rainfall leads to a high fire potential. So we are looking at an above average fire potential going into this fire season. We got a little bit of late spring, early summer moisture, but all things dry out. I'll say overall, regardless of what happens in the wintertime, by the time mid-July and August come around, everything typically dries out all the same. The things that kind of change is how much vegetation we grew and how much of that cured out. But by the time we're into August, fire danger is always high every year. There's no changing it. So the potential is high. Above average. Ultimately, how we approach things from our agency is the potential historically is always there. It ranges, it drops up and down in our weather outlooks and how we interpret the weather forecasts. When summer hits, the potential is always there. And one of the most important things we look at is prevention efforts, because 9 out of 10 fires are started by people, not by the weather. And it doesn't matter how much fire potential there is. If we do a good job with prevention and prevent people from starting fires, and fire season is going to be a lot safer for everybody. So, but yes, fire potential is definitely really high this year with the current weather conditions. So a big emphasis on prevention efforts and education with the public to help kind of keep things mild for us.
So, got your statewide perspective, narrowing it down using Springfield into the Willamette properties. Do you guys do an additional assessment on the fire systems?
We keep track, we have very heightened awareness of sort of the fire forecast, as well as sort of the heat index and the potential for just smoke. So we kind of pay attention to what the season's going to look like, and we respond accordingly. So, and we also adjust our schedules based on what we think the season. So we know this year early, we need to try to get as much hazardous fuel reduction activity done early in the season, because what might happen later in the season is very questionable. So that's what we do, is we respond by sort of follow that. All of us work together. We're all part of the CWPP. We don't work in isolation of one another. So we follow the forecast and respond accordingly. It's probably the best way to say what Willamette does.
Yeah, and same for Eugene Springfield Fire. We attend National Weather Service up in Portland, like their forecast for every single week, starting on Monday, keep up with what ODF is putting out, and stay aware. I change some of the fire danger level signs. I guess that would be just in Eugene. But yeah, always kind of keeping updated on that.
Okay, and you guys touched on this a little bit with clearing growth, but what other actions your agencies take to help reduce risk of fire?
Awareness is a big one, which is why Willamette has built out our website with information. I think that's kind of one of the most important things that we can do is to raise awareness. You mentioned defensible space around for homes, but there's also we clear fence lines. Willamette goes out, we clear fence lines to create defensible space. So, and then through our prescribed fire program, just creating landscapes that are far more manageable in the event of fire makes a huge difference. And that, of course, doesn't happen overnight. There's quite a process, but having a plan in place is and kind of sticking to the plan as best as possible, I think was helpful.
Yeah, for Eugene Springfield Fire, some fire prevention things that we try to start early in the season is, closing off some park access. Specifically in Eugene, there are some areas that's heavily trafficked by cars and there's, illegal firework activity. And so just trying to prevent any of that we can. There's, limited response, capacity, during certain times of the year, and Fourth of July weekend is one of those times, and so just doing those so we can prevent that. We also do, complaints during fire season, and so if someone has, a complaint about someone setting off fireworks or, certain vegetation on their property in their neighborhood that they're concerned about, we will go ahead and, check that out and kind of take care of that. Prevent anything from happening on that end, and of course, messaging, awareness, working with City of Springfield, City of Eugene. We have, some Spanish materials available, to encourage residents, to take precaution. I know City of Eugene and Springfield have some different firework, policies, so it's be confusing for me to not get the two mixed up. But yeah, just, trying to get awareness out, and of course, burning bans, all of that stuff, trying to get the message out, what our policies are and how to, if you're gonna have a fire, how to do so responsibly, that kind of things. And then some other risk reduction projects as we work with homeowners, which I might get into later with some of the other questions.
And something, one other simple thing I failed to mention, sorry, is, when we have people working in the field, they're carrying water with them. The large gallons of water, so that if there's a rock strike and there's a spark, they're ready for it. Not letting things get out of hand.
Yeah, from the Oregon Department of Forestry standpoint, our outreach for prevention is continuously happening year round through different events and public outreach. So, and it happens to multitude of age groups within the community. So, whether it's kind of in the springtime, we'll visit, 20 elementary schools and teach first and fourth graders about fire safety and prevention, to help educate the youth about, not playing with, whether it's, not playing with matches and lighters, how to be safe, how to have safe campfires, from doing public events like this, and other fairs and trying to do more community outreach. I know it's often, a lot of people don't know some of the rules we have in place because sometimes we can not be the best at doing that outreach. Especially when it comes to our regulated use closures, where we put out those restrictions on what you can and can't do depending on the fire danger level. If you're living on that rural interface and under our jurisdiction for restrictions during regulated use fire season. So do a lot of trying to do as much public outreach as we can to educate people about fire safety and educate people on the do's and don'ts during fire season. And then again, in the off season, we prioritize a lot of efforts into doing and creating defensible space with our fuel reduction programs.
Hannah, back to what you mentioned around this being a high-risk weekend, so you're restricting access to certain areas. Does the state do that as well?
We don't do any restricted access to any areas. We don't oversee access into any grounds. Maybe at the state parks level they might, but the Department of Forestry itself doesn't do that. And in fact, in the cities still have the say in banning fireworks or not. We can go out, tell people they can't be doing it, but we follow city guidance on that. But it is, as far as, during the 4th of July weekend, no fireworks. We know what is the legal type of fireworks you can be using, and we like to patrol and we change staffing to have additional engines out throughout that entire evening for faster response times in case fireworks do start.
And BLM does restrict them.
Yes. Yeah.
Because we love to hike out in the wilderness and can't get out there this time of year like we used to.
So yeah, and we just follow their guidance.
Yeah, and that's really important. We have other people who are doing things like that. And campfires.
Yeah.
Which used to be a little, our pretty much banned in those Then set up and cascades in.
Yeah, campfires, so campfires, depending on the fire danger level, are allowed for their banned. So in low fire danger, you can have a campfire on private property as long as you're following the guidance on size and dimensions for your campfire, having a safe campfire you can have. Once we jump fire levels, then that goes and you can no longer have those. And that's on your own property or with landowner permission, you can have those. So in the instance of BLM, they have the right to then say no campfires are going to be allowed on our lands, depending on their own guidance, and then we just follow the landowner's guidance on that.
What can community members do to reduce risk while recreating?
While recreating, well, follow the rules. That's always a good one. You know, stay in designated areas where people are allowed to be. And then, to, you know, not smoke and throw cigarette butts, to not, you know, start fires. It's just sort of I hate to say this, but it's kind of like common sense, right? And so that's really kind of what it comes down to is staying in the areas that are designated as places where people can be and where people can recreate appropriately and really follow the rules.
Yeah, I don't have much to add.
Yeah.
Where would you say the best place to find the rules?
Oh, well, they're certainly always on the website, but we actually are in the process of creating all new rule signs. Leveling is, and those will be posted throughout Parks and Trail system. And they are all inclusive, so they are very easy to follow, there's no language barriers. And so I think that we're really excited about that project. I think it's gonna be very helpful for our community to understand, and they're also, you know, visually, they're aesthetically pleasing. I don't know what the right word is, but they're easy to look at, they're easy to follow, and so I think they'll be useful. I'm helpful.
Yeah, for Eugene Springfield fires, actually, if you just go to City of Springfield or Eugene's website, since it is 4th of July weekend, it should be a banner that automatically goes on the landing page. But if you just Google City of Eugene or Springfield fire description, it'll come up. It lives on multiple pages within those cities' websites. And so it should pop up on multiple pages. The right place, and we update our social media frequently. Anytime there's any change, they will post that to Facebook, Instagram, and the website.
Yep, kind of same boat, right? Our website and our social media pages are going to be the best place to look for current fire restrictions and fire danger levels. We have signs posted throughout our district that also let people know that we're in fire season and certain things are no longer allowed. Those signs are often driven by or ignored, but they do exist. And again, our biggest, ODF tries to follow a policy of enforcement through education. So we do our best. If we see someone out there doing something they're not supposed to be, to educate them on current rules and make sure that they understand the rules. A lot of people, they move out here, they live out here, nobody ever told them that they can't be having a campfire, or they can't be mowing their lawn at 1 o'clock when we're in high fire danger. So we try to make sure first thing we do is educate people on what our regulated use closures are, before we do any sort of enforcement on that.
You mentioned a couple things like mowing lawns, starting fires on your own property. Anything else you want to speak to around what community members can do to reduce risk?
One other thing that I would mention is if you see something wrong, report it. One thing Willamette Lane has done in the last few years is we have a ranger program, and it's really helpful to have rangers that, if you see something, you can report it. Our rangers will come out and they're just really well trained to talk with people about reasons why they can or can't be doing certain things, but, it's always that thing where, if you see somebody doing something wrong, you just wanna walk away and not know, but it is great to report it, it can really make a difference.
One of our biggest causes of fires outside, throughout fire season, outside of lightning strikes, is equipment use. So, there's a reason we tell people, they can't mow their lawns after 1 o'clock in high fire danger, they can't be mowing their lawns at 1. And that's because historical data shows trends that, once you meet those high fire danger thresholds, a simple rock strike has significant potential to start a fire while you're mowing. So, trying to maintain and follow those rules as best you can, but outside of that, keeping a fire extinguisher, when you're out there operating equipment, keeping a charged hose line out nearby, so that in the instance of fire starts, you can put every reasonable effort that you can to prevent that from spreading. Not modifying your equipment and removing things like your spark arresters, which are very critical in preventing those exhaust embers and carbon material to shoot out and start fires. You think you might keep those things stocked, but you'd be surprised how many people will go out there and try to modify their chainsaws and their mowers and whatever they want to be a little bit more fun and cool, but they're designed in a way to be safe, and you got to keep those as safe as possible. Yeah.
What can community members do to protect their homes?
Yeah, the biggest thing we advocate for is creating defensible space, which is essentially just a buffer around your home. Try to educate on how homes are ignited, and so from past research from LA Palisades fire, Lahaina, it showed that flying embers were the leading cause of how homes were ignited. And so it can land on or around your home, and they can fly miles ahead of the flame front. So we're not necessarily as much concerned within the Eugene Springfield metro area. It might be different and more of a kind of rural area. But for here, we're not concerned as much with a direct flame front reaching your home. It's those embers getting on or landing around your house and then spreading up to the home that we're concerned about. So for that, creating a 5-foot buffer around your home that's completely clear of all the combustibles, so vegetation or just like patio furniture, anything that could ignite and spread, that should be completely clear. And then there's the 5 to 30-foot zone. That's just, you can have vegetation and some objects, but just making sure that there's no continuous fuel spread towards the home or other structures. And just kind of looking to see how everything's connected. People also call it the clean, green, and lean zone or something like that. And it just means you want to make sure your plants are very healthy, they're not stressed out, they're not dying, stuff like that. And then there's 30 to 100 feet out. And that's where we don't see that as much with my work, just being in the metro area. But in some spaces, you can, again, just make sure your vegetation is all cared for. There's proper tree spacing and thinning. And then there's home hardening measures too. So making sure that your roof is clear of any leaf or needle debris. A lot of times I see a ton of accumulation in gutters, and so an ember lands in gutters or roof are ignited. There's like an 80% chance your entire home can't be revived. So just kind of making sure that that's maintained. Having a Class A roof, having metal, copper gutters are always helpful. I know those are more of more expensive things that you can do, but just starting slowly, really focusing on the first 5 feet around the home is a cheaper, more effective way to start your journey towards repairing.
Only thing I'd add on to that is reducing your ladder fuels in your defensible space. Same things that will carry fire up from your brush, the branches leaning down, things that can carry fire into the canopy of any tree that might be surrounding your house or taller vegetation like that. And that can carry fire above and then further spread to stay on your roof, right? So, trying to reduce your ladder fuels is also very helpful in creating defensible space.
Can you talk a little bit about defensible space? So that, I mean, how do you measure what that is? You mentioned first 5 feet, but is there instances where it's greater than that? How do you define it? Defensible space around the house? How would they know?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty straightforward, like just the first 5 feet just being completely clear. And that starts from like decking too, especially if your decking is made out of a more fire-friendly material, that could ignite very easily. And so kind of starting from there and literally just measuring 5 feet. And then, yeah, I think just beyond that, just kind of seeing like how things are connected, water fuels, continuous fuel sources, and then I like to recommend like creating little islands. So if you want to have zoning plants that might be more flammable, more hazardous, like a lot of conifers and evergreens, you can create little fuel breaks, you can add gravel, pavers, you can still make it very aesthetically pleasing, but just having some separation between fuel sources.
And that stuff on the ground.
Yeah, and then staying away from bark mulch as much as possible.
Yeah.
And again, if you would like to use it, definitely staying clear of the 5 foot zone. And then if you're gonna use it, trying to break it up as much as possible.
It also reduces pests and saves your paint job on your house. Multiple benefits.
Okay, my next question is about what resources are available. And we already talked about like where people can find, you know, resources out there in the world. What other resources that you would point those to? And
Yeah, for ESF, I mentioned we do risk assessments, and so those are free. You can sign up on our website, just fill out the form, address, number, email, and then we call to schedule. We're pretty backed up due to other fire season demands, but we try to get to you as soon as possible. And then we have grant funds available from time to time, just depending on when something opens up and if we're awarded. And for those, we'll do things like we do an assessment. We have your information on hand. We have pictures of some issues we noted, and then we can reach out and say, hey, we have funds available. Are you interested in having this tree removed or your branches lined up, or something else removed, and doing some fuel reduction work, fire to actually come out of those property. We just bought a chipper, and so we're in the process of creating a chipping program. Essentially, it would be a neighborhood scale, so 5 or more homes would get together and request a chipper, completely free to use. And so you just lay out all of your branches and vegetation there to be chipped, and we would come out with a clear lunch of that, and then donate the bark mulch to some community gardens nearby. So we're in the process of creating that. Hopefully we'll be up and running by fall, depending on how fire season goes, but yeah.
are there other nonprofits out there who are helping like, seniors or?
At Northwest Youth Corps,
To say they do a ton of work with Berlin as well. They're really invaluable.
Yeah, outside of, we're always happy if you call the office to give guidance for some of those efforts. Our community fire planning coordinator, Connor Moore, he kind of runs, like I said earlier, he runs our fuels reduction program. He does site assessment. He can come give guidance or put you on the list. Potentially come out and have our fuels crew do some fuels reduction work on your property, as long as grant funds are available. Again, that process comes in waves. So you might get on a list, but that might be a wait list till fall or midwinter, when those grant funds become available or when the crew becomes available. So we have anywhere between 5 to 10 people who come out and they'll do that work at your process. So besides that, you can just call and we can give guidance if there's any work you want to do on your own, stuff like that. But ODF has their own fuels program. ESF kind of working on similar things. So there's a handful of programs out there that do fuels reduction. I know some private companies were awarded some grants and did a lot of work last winter as well. I am not aware of those avenues. They kind of do their own outreach, so I can guarantee you or give any other recommendations for reaching out for some of those fuel reduction programs outside of what I know, which is our own programs.
Do you typically, direct those resources to more rural areas, as ODF as opposed to the metro areas for Northside?
Yeah, exactly. It's almost, we do all of our fuels reduction programs happens in our protection districts, which is, outside the city limits in that urban interface and then out into the rural communities. So, and that also just depends on what the grants are area specific. And then as those funds become available, we can work in those areas, for such and such time. So, through reaching out to the edge of Springfield and Thurston, we can do some work, and then we did a lot of work like in the Cedar Flats area last year, Thurston Hills the year prior,
Yeah,
and such like that.
work with Connor and Rob Adams
Yeah.
as well, yeah.
Okay, this is my last question before we open it back up. What tips and other relevant information would ODF and ESF like to share? You can chime in too, Jackie. Like, I got it. Easy here.
Be safe out there.
Yeah.
Spread the word. I think everyone has a part to play.
Yeah.
In this, we are trying to go at it and not only suppression, really focusing on mitigation, and everyone has a part to play, even if that the owner or property management company, you can use their goals to come to an assessment, and so everyone takes a team, so it takes all of us to work on it and just trying to spread the message out to neighbors. A lot of the times, like, people might not necessarily like a government entity to come out and do an assessment or share information, and so they trust their neighbor more than they trust us, and that's fine, as long as the messaging is getting out there on how best to prepare.
Yeah, the biggest thing I can preach here is education and responsibility. I think I said it earlier, 9 out of 10 fires were started by people. And so the best thing we can do is educate people on how to prevent fires from starting from the beginning. Education on our rules throughout fire season. And just being responsible, trying to get a lot of that reduction or defensible space work. If you want to try to set yourself up going into fire season, trying to get that done in the springtime, before we go into the regulated use closure. That way you have more freedom to do that work throughout the day before we have to shut you down. So, that way, you're not having to do your work between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. Give yourself time to actually do that work before your fuels cure out and dry, and timing that correctly. So you're not also just cutting too soon, so your vegetation grows back up and then dries out, right? So, trying
You have to plan it all out.
yes.
That's really important.
Yeah, it's easy to want to cut down early, let your vegetation grow back up, and now we're back in fire season, right? But you don't want to do all your cutting when it's already dried and cured out. That's a big part of it, is just kind of doing that for planning in your own prevention at home.
May 23rd, that's the day,
Yeah,
No, I'm just joking, but it does, I mean, I think Lawrence makes a really good point. It does take a lot of planning with some flexibility around whether we're having a drier season or a hotter season, wetter season. This year it's everything grew at once, and so there was a big kind of rush to kind of get at it all. Yeah.
in a general sense, forecasting fire season, and around, especially our burn bans, June 15th and October 15th. June 15th is always, when Arapa plans to begin their burn bans, and then October 15th, when they kind of open things up, all subject to discretion. That's rough. So as we get closer to those dates, that's when we really appreciate when people start calling us and making sure we're calling Arapa, making sure they're calling those agencies ahead of time to make sure that they're okay to do whatever project you have in mind. Because that's the biggest thing we run into is people rushing to burn off all of that material they just cleared out, really late spring, and they're rushing to get it done before fire season starts. That's when we start to see a lot of those escape burns, escape debris burning outside on those bridge seasons in late spring and then in early fall. Those are kind of second to equipment use as some of the biggest causes of wildfire for us in the rural community specifically. It's your debris burning and your slash burn. Having those fires escape once they cross property lines becomes a big problem. So we really just reach safety on that side of things. Call us ahead of time, make sure you can do what you want to do.
So maybe this is for you, Springfield Fire, but so I have a question. I appreciate the June 15th, no burnings, but so we have in the urban area, we have properties that are in the city limits, properties in the county, and some that are surrounded. So I'm trying to understand, and historically, Eugene has taken a different approach than Springfield will use for fireworks. So I'm trying to understand, is there any unified approach? So Arapa says no burning after June 15th, but that doesn't necessarily apply in the cities the same as it does outside. Is that correct?
Arapa has everything for both Springfield city limits, city limits, and then Lake County and outside of the urban growth boundary. That's on like their main page. You don't have like a side, bar on the side that lists everything. You can find information on that there. And then in terms of just like, Springfield, policies, I know that right now they have like only cooking fires you can have in your backyard. And same as for, no day before fires or anything. That's also, in coordination with Arapa too. So it's kind of confusing because there's so many different, and we also have to like make sure we have the right things and, but yeah.
I don't want to speak outside of what I know as fact, but Arapa specifically is going to be enforcing the debris burning versus just campfires. So like I said, that'll be across the board countywide. And then city management for different townships, ODF, when you get outside those limits, is specifically talking about campfires. And then again, I kind of didn't mention this earlier, you can always call us and ask for a waiver. We can give you essentially like a permit that will allow you to have a campfire as long as you can prove to us that you can have it in a safe manner. And sometimes we'll come out, see your property, and we can give you, if we see fit, a waiver with conditions that can allow you to have a fire outside of those restrictions.
I'm not looking for people to have waivers.
Yeah.
I'm looking for less fires.
Yeah.
And I live in the urban area, but I have county around me.
Yeah,
I can tell you, given how the growth many things are in the trees, those people that burn back the limbs and things, it's very dangerous because if it gets into one of those, there's no stopping it. So I'm trying to understand what else is involved. But I understand the problem people have with all this debris and stuff, but we live so close and the growth, very few people here have done a defensible space in that. So as a result, the opportunity to file this very quickly is, but I appreciate you can issue your waivers.
Yeah, and we don't issue that many on them. We are very cautious when it comes to issuing those waivers. Yeah.
So, Hannah, just one more time for those of us who are a little slower. The Arapa page lists what all of the different municipal bans are as well as the county ones. They can set county bans, but they're not actually setting the municipal bans.
I'm pretty sure. Yes,
I think that's true.
yeah.
John prompts me to ask a question I've been thinking about a lot. Both the Altadena and Paradise fires were in essence urban fires that came when a small rural fire exploded into an urban area. What is there we can do as residents to sort of prepare ourselves for that sort of explosive event? Or is there anything?
I mean, Spokane, Washington just got a level 3 go now out of nowhere.
Oh, did they?
You know, right? And so the biggest thing is, you know, you can do as much around your home for that, but then when it's time to evacuate, you just want to have a backpack ready to go for, I'd say, a week or longer. So especially like life-saving things that you need, like prescription medication, anything for pets, children. If like something needs refrigerated, having a plan for how you're gonna do that. If you have mobility issues, you require like maybe some more time, having people that you can, like neighbors that are aware, or family and friends that can check in on you and kind of help you like making a plan that way. City of Eugene and Springfield, I believe, have like a go bag checklist that you can go on and kind of create, and then you keep that like in your car or by the door that you can just grab, because when it's go now, it's don't take time to scramble, and it's go now. So.
And I just recently attended a seminar on equine livestock evacuation and how to prepare for that. So it's kind of the same thing. When if you have animals, you want to go back for them as well, because if you have animals that are on medication, you want to make sure that they are identifiable, whether that be through a chip or through, you know, a halter or whatever, or a collar or whatever it is. But same thing, go back for yourself and for your animals, small and big. And you should always be prepared for one level higher than where you're at.
Yeah, good, and that's not just fire, it's all hazards. So earthquake, winter storm, if you're trapped somewhere, having enough food, water, having a power bank that's charged, so if you don't have access to electricity, you'll get around, knowing your area well, being able to get around without a map in case you need to take a different route to evacuate. Yeah, just being familiar with your neighborhood and community. And
Bill used to have a program, I don't think it's blue, where the ordinance should, you think like your grass is too taller than 10 to 12 inches. You still have enforcement, and I haven't seen that lately. A lot of areas around town that come July and August, we stuff like that. Urbanized area.
yeah, Springfield code compliance, I'm not sure what the exact height requirements are. I know for defensible space best practices, we recommend 4 inches or lower for grasses during fire season. So yeah, not quite sure what the exact.
And the question is more sort of, do they enforce it?
Yes, if you submit
They
a
do have an
compliance
enforcement
complaint,
system.
yeah, and if it's
I've
over
noticed
half an
that.
acre, if the property is over half an acre, the fire marshal's office, takes over, during fire season. Kind of offloads some of their work, they're more busy, so, and there's some things like if it's encroaching a roadway or an access area, that will kind of lift our priority level for enforcement. But
I may have missed this from earlier, maybe you said something, but do you have a watering recommendation? Like, I'm so conscious that we're in a drought and we need to preserve water. At the same time, you don't want a brown lawn in the middle of fire season. I usually soak down my wood pile every few days when it hasn't rained and it's hot for weeks, but I was watering my roof during the holiday fire because I didn't know what was gonna happen with embers. But do you have a recommendation on that? You know, where's the sweet spot, or what do you recommend in terms of keeping things
yeah,
watered?
I mean, it's a really good question, yeah. Go ahead, I don't know yet.
yeah, I mean, yeah, good question. It's, I get asked a lot about like, if there's a lot of like private kind of water, sprinkler systems that people inquire about, you know, to turn on if they had to evacuate, if they turn that on. And, my first thought there is you never know what your water supply is gonna look like. If there is a big fire nearby, so it's not something that you wanna rely on. In terms of like letting things down, during a red flag event, when it's super low humidity, super hot, and the winds are high, it's gonna dry out really fast. I don't know that it does much. I understand like wanting to keep your lawns green, but I think something better you can do is just really creating that buffer around your home first. And then depending on water conditions of the summer, you might be able to, but I wouldn't use that as like a defense mechanism. It doesn't hurt, but it's just not something that I would suggest relying on. Or like if you're gonna invest your money in something, I wouldn't invest it in these fancy like private sprinkler kind of systems. Instead, maybe like upgrading your siding materials, your roof, your gutters. I don't know if anyone has anything.
Well, right place, right plant is another thing. So you definitely want to have your defensible space, but then in your areas where you are growing, where you do have plant materials, you know, try to have things that aren't terribly water consumptive or, you know, plants that are appropriate to our climate is helpful. Nonetheless, you do have to have your defensible space because if it's gonna burn, it's gonna.
Go off that, you can kind of classify your fuels, your available fuels around your home into, we classify them in the wildland side on how long it takes for them to dry out in, hot, dry conditions. So, your grass and your small grass types, those are 1 hour fuels. That means is in the event of a fire and hot weather conditions, it would take 1 hour for those fuels to dry out and then be able to be consumed by fire. And then once you get into, thicker brush, we call those 10-hour fuels. In that instance, it'd take about 10 hours for those to dry out and then be available for consumption. And then once you get into larger, small trees, it'd be 100-hour, and large trees are 1,000-hour fuels. And we monitor throughout the summers, just how dry those fuels get. And then that helps add to our calculations for, fire potential. So kind of what you're saying, you can water your lawn a lot, inevitably your grass will still dry out. But a well manicured lawn isn't gonna carry fire into your home if you have defensible space and when that grass is burning, it's not creating significant flame lengths that are gonna carry over. So managing it is helpful. Having a sprinkler system can help deter fire, to a certain extent. With a flaming front coming towards your house, inevitably that grass will still dry out and burn, which is why it's important to reduce fuel density and ladder fuels in creating your defensible space.
And that's all helpful. I was thinking more of the embers thing, like you mentioned
Yeah.
earlier, embers could go for miles.
Yeah.
And so if it hits a brown grass, it's gonna
Yeah,
go.
exactly.
If it's watered.
And if it is watered and it is moist, then that one ember has a lot less likelihood of chance of actually igniting. And we have, data we call the ignition component. And our ignition component, when we're figuring out our fire danger levels and our potential for spread of fire, the ignition component is what is the percentage chance that an ember being passed from ahead of a fire what's the likelihood of that being able to then land and ignite a secondary fire ahead, right? And once we get into those high and extreme fire dangers, that's when that ignition component increases, and having something like a well watered lawn, well irrigated lawn will definitely help deter ember wash from being able to ignite secondary fires near your home. At least, yeah.
Well, we are at time. I didn't get your questions answered. I'm sure I'll stick around for just a couple more minutes after the program. Thank you all again for being here today and to our speakers. And what can we look for in a couple weeks?
Green Hill
Green-
Humane Society
Right.
on the 16th.
Guys.
Thank you.